Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Amit Rai. Amit is the Vice President, Head of Enterprise Product and Sales at Zoominfo. Amit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's very nice to be here.
We're delighted to have you. So, Amit, let's start with yourself. Can you give us a very brief overview of your background in technology from where you got started to what's led you to where you're at today?
So, I started my career as an electronics and communication engineer. I did my undergrad in electronics and communication engineering, and I started my career as a software engineer. The reason I was pretty passionate about my undergrad degree was because there I got an opportunity to know hardware and software intersection. So that's why it's pretty cool. And then I started working for a company called Infosys Technologies Limited in India as a software engineer, where I worked for Fidelity Investments. After that, I worked for Qualcomm. I worked for a company called Model N in various engineering and product management capacity. The common theme in my entire career has been working for large enterprises and application of modeling, machine learning, some kind of application of technology for AI machine learning. After Model N, I started working for a company called EverString, where we're trying to get into essentially predictive marketing space, where it was application of AI machine learning for B2B companies. And EverString was a pretty good journey where we built a pretty solid company. And we'll talk a lot about those things, but essentially that got acquired by Zoominfo last year. And so that's where I am today. And that has been my journey so far.
Excellent, and thank you so much for sharing that. You mentioned there about the acquisition last year, which has now led you to Zoominfo. So before we jump into your role and the work that you and your team does, tell us about Zoominfo for anyone listening who's not familiar with the business. Who are Zoominfo? What's the mission of the organization? And then we can go into the technology behind it.
So John, Zoominfo is actually one of the fastest growing publicly traded company on planet Earth that has built what we call the modern go-to-market platform. And so this is one of the pioneers in the space where they have automated AI machine learning in the B2B data layer space. And on top of that, they are building sales and marketing solutions. So think about the best way to think about Zoominfo is think about Salesforce on steroids, and steroids in this case is the data layer. Zoominfo is typically used by sales and marketing professionals for their go-to-market needs, if you will.
That's really helpful context, and I'm sure you're going to tell us more about the growth, but to frame it that way sounds very exciting. So let's go into your role as the head of enterprise product and sales. What does that mean? And walk us through some of the customer use cases for Zoominfo.
So if you think about Zoominfo as a company, they have primarily focused on sales and marketing use case. That has been their traditional use case for, call it roughly 10 years or so. With the acquisition of EverString, we were actually focused on master data management, IT, analytics, data science use cases, where the focus was mostly on the acquisition of data and data management, data orchestration. So through the acquisition of EverString now, what I'm responsible for is building that business line, what we call data as a service at Zoominfo, where our user persona, I'm responsible for strategizing the product strategy to come up with what's the next best thing that we should be building for the master data management team, data analytics team, data science team, sales operations, marketing operations. So that's on the product strategy side. Additionally, I'm responsible for building the go-to-market team, the sales team, the product marketing team, data delivery team that focuses on data delivery, and the articulating the value of data to this user persona that I'm talking about.
It's quite a complex role with the intersection of many various teams. To stay on the data team specifically and help our audience visualize what the current makeup of the data team is and how you guys utilize modern data analytics, machine learning, can you give us some insight into what role AI plays across the broader data team? I'm sure it's used in a multifaceted way, but where do you see elements of AI adoption in Zoominfo?
Great question. First of all, I would like to demystify the first very important part, which is our innovation team, the data innovation team. When we talk about AI, Zoominfo is leading, pioneering the wave in terms of business natural language processing. So AI is multifaceted. We focus on business natural language processing, where there's an innovation team that is constantly coming out with innovative ways with coming up with business semantics. So think about when you talk with Siri, you can ask Siri, what is the weather today? Siri would be able to answer that perfectly fine. But if you ask Siri, what are the top predictive marketing companies in California? Siri will have no idea. So because here now we are bringing business semantics, predictive marketing, and that's where we are constantly pushing the envelope to figure out how do we become better in business natural language processing. So that's our data innovation and data science team. So if you think about that's an innovation at our end. Now that data is being then utilized by our customers, those business semantics that we talked about. In terms of, if you think about data science team, they are always doing segmentation for their sales team, marketing team. So the use case, can you tell me what are the top top industries where we sell most of our products? To know the answer to that question, you should be able to figure out what are the industries. And so to get right industry, you need a deep learning model that can use this business natural language processing, business semantics to predict what those industries are. For example, if you think about predictive marketing, the right industry is software publisher. It's not pharmaceutical. So those are some of the applications, which is segmentation and things like that, which our customers utilize for the business natural language processing things that we talked about. We have data services team that are constantly working with our customers for delivery of data. We have the data orchestration team, data delivery management team that are working with the data orchestration, data management with sales ops, marketing ops. And then we have a specialist data sellers who actually specialize in the lingo of how to sell business data, talk about the value proposition of business data. So those are the various teams on the go-to-market side. We actually have a specialized marketing team that actually focus on talking about just B2B data. And then last but not the least, we have actually data product management and data engineering team that actually focuses on just data, building data products and data engineering.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
So on that final piece, staying on the topic of data engineering, I know from previous conversations we've had, Zoominfo has been growing rapidly. With that, you've had to bring in a huge number of data engineers to support the large flow of data ingestion. Can you give us some insight into, when you look at the broader technology team, where it is now compared to this time last year as part of the acquisition? And then looking ahead, where do you expect Zoominfo to be this time next year when it comes to headcount and makeup of the broader enterprise team?
Yeah, so that's a great question, John. So if you think about Zoominfo as a company, I think the rough framework in terms of thinking about comparison would be, I would say, last 3 years, if you will. So in the last 3 years, Zoominfo has acquired close to 10 companies. And through the acquisition of those 10 companies, they have acquired really solid data engineering pool, if you will, because those 10 companies were focused on different distinct data elements. For example, through the acquisition of EverString, Zoominfo has acquired world's best company core firmographics data. In the past, Zoominfo has acquired contact pioneer like Zoominfo, the company itself, Rain King. Then there were companies called Data Nice. Recently, we acquired a company called that were focused on like intent data. So bottom line is, in the last 3 years, through several acquisitions, Zoominfo has grown its data team like close to now we are talking about 700 people that are focused on some shape or form, which is essentially double the size of team where we were in terms of data engineering as compared to the last year.
Which really supports your earlier statement about Zoominfo being one of the fastest growing public tech companies over the past few years. I want to now get some insight into what you've enjoyed about your time working at Zoominfo and using that to speak to an audience of potentially future employees. I know you're heavily involved in shaping the strategy, but you also play a big part in developing leadership and interviewing prospective candidates. When you're speaking to candidates who are considering Zoominfo, what is it you tell them about the work, about the culture, about the environment that gets them excited enough to join Zoominfo over some of the many other great opportunities available to them?
Yep. Another great question, John. So one of the things that I personally get excited about is you have to think about whenever I'm thinking about joining a business, I want to be part of a company that is a founder-led business. So if you think about Henry Schuck, who is our CEO, and still a founder-led business, he's extremely passionate about data. That's number one. And he has literally built a category defining company in the space. Like before Zoominfo, the kind of multiples you will get for a data company, not huge because there were not a lot of modern data players. So essentially, if you think about AI, machine learning adoption, data is at the crux of everything. So AI, machine learning, for that to get to the same level as you have Googles of the world, Facebook of the world, Amazons of the world, they are the best players, what I call in the B2C space. But if you think about B2B, AI, machine learning, the underlying data is very sparse and inaccurate, and it's pretty hard. It's harder than what you can get on the B2C side. So in terms of challenge, it's a pretty new space, and that's the reason why Zoominfo has been rewarded by the market so well. So it's almost if you have to go back in time, think about the year 2000 when you had the Yahoos of the world, Googles of the world. That's what Zoominfo is doing from technology point of view. So founder-led business, which is there's no politics, there's a lot of scope if you are very outcome focused. AI, machine learning, which is pretty core technology focused, especially in B2B. Culture wise, I talked about, which is it's pretty hard for you to get this kind of exposure right now anywhere on planet Earth, because even in academic world, you do not have a lot of B2B data, AI, machine learning companies. So gives you an opportunity to shape the future. So you are working on something which is pretty cool from technology point of view. It's one of the fastest growing company on planet Earth. And then last but not the best part about this job is customers love us because this was such a hard problem. If you think about sales and marketing, every company in the world has a sales and marketing team, and they really need good data. So the work that we do has a direct impact and immediate impact in the life of our like user persona, sales professional, marketing professional. So it's pretty meaningful in that sense. It helps our customers to grow their revenue. So right product market fit, right technology, right culture, those are all the elements that I really like about Zoominfo.
Amit, you've given us a great overview of Zoominfo and some insight into what makes it a great place to work and what type of opportunities there are going to be for people across data science, data engineering, machine learning over the years ahead. When you look at the business objectives and what's possible, what's next for Zoominfo? Where do you guys go from here?
Yeah, it is a great question, John. And that's the part that keeps it Zoominfo a pretty exciting place to work for. So if you think about Zoominfo as a company, again, I will keep going back to the parallel with Google. When Google built the data layer, essentially that's what they built, like organizing world's information. The number of opportunities, the number of areas that they were able to get in was like infinite. Similarly, if you think about Zoominfo as a company, because we have built a pretty good, a solid foundational B2B data layer, so we have organized world's business information, if you will. the use cases that we are thinking is not only the modern go-to-market platform, which is sales and marketing, but now we have started touching on some other use cases like recruiting, operations, master data management, IT analytics. So this will become the leader in the space where you will have an app category, I think, and this is all like my personal view, where Zoominfo data will be used by some large organizations or some emerging products, startups. And this is going to build an ecosystem of data company that will be built around Zoominfo. And that's the exciting piece that keeps it going for me personally, which is Zoominfo at the center of this ecosystem of data companies that's built around Zoominfo.
Final question from me, Amit. When you're speaking to people about Zoominfo who are considering this as a place to work, what do you look for in a candidate? What makes somebody stand out? Is there industry background? Is it type of work? Is it overall passion or enthusiasm for the work that they do? What is it that you look for when you're speaking to people?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions, John. So typically when I'm looking for a candidate, if you think about like sales role or solution consulting roles, I'm always looking for like hunger, passion, desire. Those are like must have. So I almost say to candidates that even if you are not passionate about the role, you need to fake it and convince me that you are passionate. So that's the number one thing. Then it's not about the industry knowledge per se, but I am definitely looking for a bare minimum, your ability to how you can solve. Think about a Lego, like a puzzle, if you will. So there are like some case studies that we do to make sure that you can at least think logically, especially when you're thinking about solution consulting role and product management. We do case studies that are pretty like agnostic, industry agnostic, if you will. That just gives you ability. I want to know how you approach a problem and you have the hunger and desire at least to make an attempt to solve the problem. Those are some of the things that we look for in the candidates, not necessarily industry experience per se.
Amit, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you coming on and talking to us, sharing your own journey, giving us the insight into Zoominfo and really setting up the next chapter of this company's amazing growth. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of great opportunities for people who are interested in working in AI and data at Zoominfo, and you've given us some insight into what they can do to interview well. So we really appreciate your time here today, and we wish you and the team the best of luck in 2022.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.